This is global. It's macro. The problem is you and I cannot see it. It's invisible to us. And my teacher, Dr. R. Buckminster Fuller, says people cannot get out of the way of things they cannot see coming towards them. Things are changing rapidly. I was watching CNBC. They're talking about, we're coming in for a soft landing and don't nobody worry. And, I'm going, holy mackerel. And I was just in LA for 4th of July. I'm talking to my friends. Yeah, we don't have to worry. Economy's doing fine and all this. And I said, they took the ceiling off the debt. And now the debt is skyrocketing. I said, so people don't see the debt that's piling up. So they think everything's fine because the moment they took the debt ceiling, what they did, stock market took off again. So everybody thinks happy days are here again.
I see a confluence of events that are coming together at the same time. And, I think it's very important to acknowledge the fact that the reasons behind the banks running into trouble have not gone away. And at the same time, you could argue that the forces outside the country, the continued de-dollarization and the bombshell announcement made by your friend Jim Rickards a couple of weeks ago, something we've been following and talking about between you and I for a very long time, that being the BRICS nations are supposedly set to announce to the world their new currency, which he anticipates to be backed by gold, as we've talked about, the only other Tier 1 reserve asset. He expects them to make that announcement August 22nd at the BRICS meeting in Johannesburg. So these things are rapidly coming to a head, and I think it's something people need to be cognitively aware of because the world's about to change if he's right.
And the reason this is so important is, number one, Jim Rickards is a man who has seen it from the inside in. He was with LTCM, Long-Term Capital Management, that collapsed. He wrote the book, How We Fight Wars with Money These Days. I cannot believe what they're doing. And now the BRICS and all this is happening. First move was to cut off the Keystone XL pipeline. First move. So oil went from $30 a barrel to $130. Inflation went through the roof. Another term you use quite often is called weaponizing the dollar. How did we weaponize a dollar? That's what Rickards is saying about currency wars. So what does that mean to you, Andy? Weaponizing the dollar.
It's very simple, Robert. To me, if you are the world reserve currency, you're supposed to remain neutral as it pertains to world events and the usage of the dollar. You can have your own views, but if you are the administrator of the world reserve currency as it pertains to who can and who cannot use the dollar, really, in my opinion, should not be up to anyone for that matter, especially the people that are administrating the currency, because what it does is it creates favorites in the minds of many, and it also creates anxiety. And it by kicking Russia out of SWIFT, by saying to them, you can no longer use the SWIFT system, which is the oxygen needed in order for money to transfer around the globe. And worse yet, sanctioning and, in essence, confiscating their assets, using them to rebuild the Ukraine. We have created an environment where instead of just being the administrators in an impartial manner of the world reserve currency, now we are telling the world who can and who cannot use it. And I think that has created the incentive for many, many other countries around the world to strongly consider breaking free from the Western system and taking a look at what the BRICS have to offer.
When the dollar was a reserve currency, it was supposed to be as good as gold. That goes back to 1944, the Bretton Woods Agreement. So it's supposed to be neutral, like just gold. And that's what the reserve currency of the world meant. And since we were supposed to be neutral, everybody's supposed to be able to trade back and forth using the dollars. And this is what Jim Rickards was talking about in currency wars. He says they're going to start using money to fight wars now.
That's right.
And so it's all coming true, but the average person with their head up their butt can't see it coming. They're still wondering who's going to win the Super Bowl next year. They cannot see what's coming. So they're weaponizing the dollar. They use it against Russia. They try to crush Russia's economy.
Right.
And also, Biden did something to Saudi Arabia. What did he do to them?
Well, he alienated them. He told them that we were going green. And as a result, on top of signing a contract, as we've talked about, a military agreement with Russia, they have joined the BRICS.
Saudi Arabia joined Russia. The reason that's important, because what Andy talks about in 1974, the U.S. dollar became the petrodollar. Since the dollar was no longer backed by gold, because Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard in 81, they made the dollar backed by oil. That's why it's called the petrodollar. That was 74, I believe. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct. And it was the protection of the Saudi kingdom that, by extension, gave the dollar its hegemony. You protect us, and OPEC and the rest of us, or Saudi Arabia and the rest of the OPEC community, will value and price oil exclusively in dollars. We
promised Saudi Arabia, the U.S. did, that we would protect them. And so what happened when Biden comes to office, he pissed the Saudis. They weaponized the dollar against Russia. And Saudi Arabia finally says, well, we're going to fight you then. They joined Russia's side. And that's this whole coalition called BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and possibly Japan and Mexico joining them. So there's a war going on using money.
Absolutely, 100%. And not only using money, I think pushing away the one entity, that being Saudi Arabia, that gives the dollar its unique standing on the globe, telling them that we don't need them anymore. We are going green. By 2030, we're going to start making strong strides in going green. And so we are pushing them away from wanting to continue to price oil in dollars.
I mean, there's no way. I mean, you can talk about oil, and you can talk about air, you can talk about coal, you can talk about solar, but we're still going to be using oil for quite a while yet, because my degree is an ocean transportation minor in oil from Kings Point Merchant Marine Academy. And what we were taught at the academy was that civilization runs on energy. And when Biden made energy so expensive and weaponized the dollar, this is all in less than 4 years. He basically screwed the world, and he's screwing America on top of it. Why is this guy doing this stuff?
I think it's very important to understand one quick thing before I answer that question. And I'll tell you why I think he's doing it. If you look at his number one chief economic advisor, it's a man named Jared Bernstein, whose whole philosophy is relinquishing the world reserve status of the U.S. dollar. He's the head economic advisor to the Biden administration. And in a report he wrote in 2014 called Dethrone King Dollar in the New York Times, he says that the distortions and trade imbalances created by being the world reserve currency should be relinquished immediately. So you have to ask yourself, is this a coincidence? I'm not sure. But the question is, why would you do this? And I think that, boils down to me to one simple equation. According to the 2022 balance sheet of the United States government, the assets that we have are $5 trillion. That's it, $5 trillion, of which 42.3% of the assets that the United States government holds, 42%, is student debt. And on top of that, we have 151 trillion in liabilities.
Student debt went through the roof. Now it's our biggest asset. It's our biggest asset. I mean, we're bleeding the pockets of our students.